What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be checking out the Transformers Legacy Evolution Titan Class Decepticon Nemesis. Now, this is a massive figure and a character which I am so excited to finally see get a release. So, with all that being said, let's just get stuck straight into things. So, first of all, here we have the packaging. It's absolutely gigantic, and we get some sick artwork. So, slap bang and center, you've got the Nemesis raining complete and absolute hell down on the Autobot arc. And then as we flip the packaging round to the back, we get some awesome product shots. So here we have her in her robot mode. I think this is a complete original design. As far as I'm aware, the Nemesis has never transformed. So it is a very similar situation to what we saw from the Titan class arc. I believe before the Netflix series aired, that was also a ship which never had a robot mode. So yeah, definitely very excited to check this out. And it also goes through a few of the features, such as the docking stations, the fact that you can deploy a ramp, and that she does come with that all-important Evo-Fusion gimmick. So with all that being said, let's get her out here. Let's stack her up alongside of some of the other Titans and verse her off against the Titan class arc. So we're going to be kickstarting this review off by checking out the Nemesis in her ship mode. Now, first of all, you will have to excuse me if there are a few ugly, wonky camera angles. This is like the 10th time that I've tried to shoot this review because, gonna be honest, she completely exceeded my expectations in terms of size in both ship mode and especially robot mode. I mean, from kind of the base of her foot to the top of her shoulder, I think she's probably one of the largest Titan class figures that we've seen released since Fortress Maximus, since Metroplex. She really is pretty mighty, but back to the ship mode, it looks fantastic, and I'm going to be honest, it's kind of surreal to finally get a mainline release for the Nemesis. Had you said to me a few years ago, did I think it was likely we would ever see this character? I'd say maybe if it was a HasLab, because the Nemesis has always been way bigger in the animation when in comparison to the arc, and not to mention it has a way more abstract and distinctive design in the sense that it has these massive angles, it has this huge curvature on the underside. I just never thought they could successfully pull it off as a Titan, but I'm so glad to say that they absolutely did, because this ship mode, at least in my opinion, decimates what we saw from the arc. I mean, she does look so badass. Now, this improves in two major massive areas in my opinion when in comparison to that previous release. So, first of all, the lack of any hollow spacing. For the most part, the ship is completely filled in, which, to be fair, I think is exactly what you would expect from the most expensive Titan release to date. At least here in the UK, she retails for an astronomical £210. So, definitely does warrant a hefty price tag. So, it is good that they kind of packed her in with all of the bells and whistles that you'd expect from the Nemesis. And the second improvement is that all of the artillery that you guys can see packed here into the front, this time round is fully articulated. So you can actually grab some of these turrets, rotate them the full 360, which whilst is very simple, I definitely did appreciate it when in comparison to the static turrets that we saw packed onto the arc. But in terms of detail, she looks fantastic. You know, my personal favorite part about the ship would have to be kind of the command tower, you know, with that super sick transparent red plastic on the purple plastic. Does just look super awesome. And just in terms of the sculpting, you know, it's incredibly impressive. Really does match what we've seen from some of the previous War for Cybertron figures in terms of how much detail they've got in here. And as we flip her all the way around to the back, she does come with 4 massive thrusters. Now, unfortunately, she doesn't include any blast effects. Considering the hefty price tag, that is something that I definitely don't think would have gone amiss, but she does have a fully retractable ramp. Unfortunately, it's not spring-loaded nor nowhere near as badass as what we saw from the arc, but it is definitely something you can do, very similar to the ramps that we saw on the Commander class Skylinks. And as I'm sure you guys would have noticed already, they have this time round given you the option to retract the bottom fin, which I think is awesome because due to her very abstract design, it would have been very difficult to manage this and just kind of rest it on a surface. In terms of features, she does have a shed ton of kind of blast effect ports all the way throughout her. So, I mean, if you have any spare effects left over, you can peg them here onto the sides to kind of simulate her taking damage from the arc. And another feature that she has is that if you take these tiny little panels and flip them upwards, she does have 4 tiny little Seeker ships, which are unfortunately unpainted, which can peg onto these launch pads. Now, they are such a pain in the ass to kind of get out when in ship mode, so this is definitely a feature which I'll go into a little more detail with once we check her out in the robot mode. Now, as we get stuck into a few comparisons, here we have the Titan class Nemesis alongside her Autobot equivalent, that being the Autobot Arc. And as you guys can see, you know, there is a massive difference. Kind of go back to my earlier point, I never thought they would create the Nemesis considering the scale difference between the two in the animation. But yeah, they look fantastic alongside each other. You know, if you have the space and you can kind of display both of these in their ship mode, you know, maybe battling it out, hanging from a ceiling, it's going to look awesome. And again, you know, it's just so sick to see the action figure representations of the Autobot arc and the Nemesis from the original G1 series. That is something which I never in a million years thought we would be seeing. So next up, here we have her stacked up alongside the Titan class Omega Supreme, and I thought this size comparison would really give you guys a sense of appreciation of just how massive she is even in her ship mode. I mean, I don't think at the moment there has been a Titan which in its alt mode has been the same size as a Titan in its robot mode. I mean, as you guys can see, she's pretty much smack on to the size of Omega Supreme. So yeah, definitely an incredibly mighty Titan class release, and I'm just so glad that they didn't skimp out on scale with this one, because in the past, you know, some of the most recent Titan class figures, with the exception of the Cybertron Metroplex, have been slightly smaller in scale when in comparison to some of the earlier ones, such as the G1 Metroplex and Fortress Maximus. Dropping a few size classes down, here we have her alongside the Legacy Commander class Armada Optimus Prime and the Legacy Leader class Dreadwing. Then we have her compared alongside a few Voyager scale figures, so we have the Earthrise Optimus Prime, Siege Megatron, and Voyager Tarn, and there is a reason why I brought out Tarn, which I'm pretty certain you guys will be able to see once we get her transformed into robot mode. And then finally, here we have her alongside a few core class figures, including the combined mode of Volcanicus, because I think officially these are the closest to in scale we're going to get between the Transformers and the ship, and even the core class figures are way too big than they should be in comparison to the Nemesis. But in terms of a display, much like the Arc, I don't think it's going to look too bad at all. Now, as we get stuck into her transformation, because unlike some of the past Titans where they had base forms and kind of crumpled up into a mess, because she has an actual ship mode, her conversion between this form and robot mode is a little more complex. So to kickstart things off with, you are going to want to grab these two sections first of all and just kind of angle them out to the sides. I will say these are probably the weakest part about not only the transformation, but also the figure. They are made out of a very flexible type of plastic, and to be honest, it takes next to nothing to pop them off. So I definitely wish, you know, maybe they could have shot a pin joint through this. But anyway, continuing on, you're then going to want to grab these sections here and just split this right down the middle. So this is basically going to form her shoulder joints and her forearms. So bring that there all the way down until it does click into place. The next step is to take what will become her chest piece and just flop this forward. You don't have to peg it in anywhere just yet, but then you're going to want to take the command deck, bring this section here backwards, and as you can see, the neck is on a slider joint. So you are going to want to shoot this pin here forwards, take the neck and just hinge this here all the way up, and there is a little slot on the inside of here that this tab is going to peg into. So use these joints to just get this and then just snap that there into place. The next step is to basically just kind of angle these shoulders here out to the sides, because you're going to want to take one of two waist joints and rotate it here all the way around so that the back is now facing the front. The next step is to then take the chest piece and just snap it there into place, and then you can take the neck and click it in like that. Then we're going to want to spin her here all the way around to the back, and as I move the camera down, this piece does completely separate. So personally, I would recommend kind of flaring these two sections out to the sides. It does just make things a little easier later on. So you're just going to want to gently wiggle this whole piece here apart. We can then pull this all the way out and then rotate this entire back assembly all the way around. Now, there is a clip inside here that's going to smack itself into this tab. So let's just snap this section in here very securely, just like this. You'll again want to come down to the base of the ship, take these tiny little fins and just collapse them flat on both the front and the back, and then you're going to want to separate this here right down the middle. Now, this is going to be a little tricky to kind of convey on camera due to the size of the Nemesis, but basically just pry these wings open and then take this section here and also pry all of this section here open. We can then basically take this entire assembly and just bring it all the way down until the knee joint does click into place very securely. I'd recommend kind of ratcheting the hips out to the side just so that you can then take the foot, bring this section down and then rotate it all the way around so the front is now facing the back. You'll then want to take the thigh joint, rotate this section here all the way around. Again, very sturdy ratchet joints on this figure, and then you're going to want to take this wing here and just collapse it in upon itself, and then take this piece and collapse this down. Rinse and repeat the exact same process on the opposite side. Bosh! Once you've done that, we can then rotate here at the waist. So bring this entire assembly here all the way round to the front. You'll then want to take kind of these side fins, which will now become her shin pads. So just detach these away and rotate them here all the way around. So basically flipping them upside down, and then we can split this fin here right down the middle, and these little tabs are going to smack themselves into that slot, so just snap that in there. You'll then want to do the exact same on the opposite side, so rotate this piece here around, split right down the middle, and then just tab those sections there into place. And then for a few finishing touches, you're going to want to take these pieces, kind of angle them out to the sides just to get them out of the way, as we're going to bring the entire forearm assembly down on both sides, just like this. We can then take her chest piece, extend these sections here out, flare out the cheeks, and then take what is essentially the blast shield and lift that section up, and that's the entire chest and the head fully transformed. Then as we come here to the arms, you're going to want to flip open this panel and then rotate this section here all the way around, so that we can then take the wrist, rotate this section around also, and then fold out the fingers and the thumb, and then just compress this piece back into place. Do the exact same on the opposite side, so flip that section out, rotate this panel out, and then rotate here at her wrist. Can be a little difficult to kind of find that sweet spot so that it's not bumping into any of the sculpt work, but fold out the fingers and thumb, collapse this section here down, and then finally, just because I personally think it adds a little bit more of a dynamic flair, we can take this back wing and just kind of angle it here outwards a little bit. And bosh, here we have her fully transformed into her robot mode. And personally, I think she looks kind of nuts. I mean, she's incredibly creepy looking, and this is a prime example of where I'm so glad Hasbro have kind of taken creative license, because this robot mode design is just way more badass than I think it would have been had they stuck to a slightly more traditional design. I mean, she does transform into this incredibly kind of slender, creepy, evil looking Decepticon, and to kind of complement the arc, which I believe took inspiration from the last Autobot, this is supposed to be the last Decepticon, and you definitely do see a few of the design traits borrowed from the arc, such as the insignia, the Decepticon insignia, becoming the design of her head sculpt, and she does just look super terrific. I mean, check out the detail that we have packed into her. Now, due to the size, I'm going to kind of package in the detail and the articulation segment together, so in terms of the head, it can look up and down, as well as tilt side to side, which again, I thought was awesome, especially for getting her into some of those slightly more lurching poses. It really does look great, and it also does rotate left to right. Now, she does have kind of a face mask, or I guess you could say a blast shield, so you can take the cheeks, compress them in, and then take the crest and slide this section down, and bang, she's primed and ready to take on some of the Autobots in battle, which I thought was pretty cool. And the same can kind of be said here for the chest. You know, if you wanted to, you could compress these sections in a little further, but personally, I like to keep that Decepticon logo slap bang and center. So yeah, that's really awesome. In terms of the design of her shoulder, looks so wickedly cool. I mean, we get this super ferocious kind of angular design. It's massive, loads of detail packed onto the front. In terms of her shoulder articulation, basically they can rotate the full 360, although you're definitely going to want to make sure that you angle those back fins kind of a little more straightened so that you don't run the risk in kind of bumping into anything. So that's pretty cool. We also get some very sturdy ratchet joints going out to the sides, which is badass. And then as we just come down here to kind of the biceps and the elbows, again, an incredibly creepy, slender-like design, especially in the way they've sculpted the fingers. Really nice detail and paint kind of smacked onto the forearm. This is where she kind of has that docking feature, which I mentioned previously in the ship mode. It works way nicer here in robot mode because we actually get a slider joint. So if you take this and kind of hinge it out to the side, the same could be said on the opposite side as well. Check that out. This entire docking station kind of flips forwards, and it does reveal two micro seekers kind of pegged on there. These are removable. Personally, I wouldn't recommend to detach them due to their incredibly small scale, but yeah, that's a pretty nice attention to detail. As said previously, these pieces are definitely prone to popping off, so I would recommend hinging them, just getting them out of the way, because she has a fantastic range out of the bicep and elbow. So we get this ratchet joint, which can kind of bend in and outwards. I've never seen this range of motion on a Transformer before, so yeah, that's really cool. We also get a slight rotation here at where I imagine the forearm would be. There is a bicep rotation as well as a double jointed elbow, so that's super sick. We do get a bit of wrist articulation as well as these three fingers, which are kind of combined so they can move back and forth, and the thumb is fully independent. And then as we come down here to the hips, the sculpt work is nowhere near as impressive in my opinion as to what we've got here from the upper body, but the articulation is quite literally off the charts for not only a Hasbro Transformer, but for a Titan class figure. So in terms of the hip joints, we get a fantastic high kick, and to be honest with you, it could probably go even slightly further than what I'm demonstrating in this video. I mean, check out that high kick. If she was to karate chop any Autobot tower, it would quite literally be decimated in a matter of seconds. So yeah, that's really badass. And the range of motion kicking backwards as well is just as impressive as going forward, so that's pretty awesome. We also get incredibly sturdy ratchet joints going out to the sides. It again could probably go slightly further than what I'm showcasing in this video, but due to my setup, I don't want to bash into any lights. We also do get a very nice sturdy ratchet joint packed into the hip, as well as a, I'd say roughly slightly past 90-degree range here out of the knee, so that's pretty cool. And then finally, as we come down here to the ankles, we get one ratchet joint which can click forwards. Really does help for getting her again into some of those slightly more lurching like poses, and we do get a rotation due to transformation, as well as the signature War for Cybertron / Legacy ankle pivot. So overall, in terms of her design, in terms of the paintwork, and in particular the articulation for a Titan class, I am incredibly impressed. I mean, she does look mighty striking. Again, so awesome to see them kind of adapt an original design for a Titan class figure, and I can only hope they are slightly more bolder in the future and begin pushing out more of these original designs, because especially with the Junkions, I do think they are by far some of the coolest looking figures that we've so far seen released for not only Transformers Legacy, but for Transformers in general. Now, in terms of accessories / weaponry, specifically here for robot mode, she doesn't come with anything additional per se, but what they have done is kind of made use of the extra pieces that we've got here from the design. So I believe her Evo-Fusion gimmick is that you can kind of pop off these side wings to create these incredibly tiny pickaxes. Gonna be honest, definitely the weakest part about the figure. I personally just like to keep them slapped onto the shoulder because it does make her look slightly more formidable, but for whatever reason, you know, maybe if she's injured in battle, she just needs a little weapon to kind of take out a herd of Autobots, then she can deploy these. But one of the coolest examples of kind of making use of what you've got to hand would have to be the weapons that they've packed into her shins. So as we drop down to these, basically what you can do is detach these panels here, take this entire section, detach it away from her leg, and that is a pretty hefty piece of kibble, and you can transform this into kind of a massive cannon. Now, it's a very simplistic transformation, and to be honest, I imagine was kind of an afterthought, but at least they tried. So you can flip out this nice little gunmetal nozzle. We can then come here to the back and try your best to kind of pry out this handle. It's very difficult to do, especially the first few times, and then split right down here the middle, and bang, you've got yourself a shin blaster. And the same can be said here for the opposite one. So you can quite literally have her using her shin kibble as dual blasters to take on the Autobots, which, gonna be honest with you guys, again, I do think is an incredibly impressive use of making use of exactly what you've got to hand. I mean, if she's low on energon, she can just rip pieces of herself off, turn them into blasters, and she is again good to go. Now, as we check out a few robot mode comparisons, here we have her stacked up alongside the Titan class Arc, but at least as far as my own personal preference goes, I think the Nemesis looks 10 times more badass. I mean, she truly does embody a Decepticon perfectly. If this was the last Decepticon, I would absolutely believe it, because she looks super creepy, super slender, and really intimidating. And not to mention, she does look like she would wipe the floor clean with the Arc, maybe even take his head clean off with one of her shoulder spikes. So yeah, at least as far as a Titan class robot goes, the Nemesis absolutely hands down demolishes the Arc in my opinion. Next up, here we have her alongside a previously released Titan, that being the Siege Omega Supreme, Commander class Armada Optimus Prime, and Legacy Leader class Dreadwing, Earthrise Optimus Prime, Siege Megatron, and Voyager class Tarn. And there are definitely design similarities between the head design of the Nemesis and Tarn, so I wonder if there is supposed to be a relation between these two. You know, maybe the Nemesis is Tarn's mommy, maybe it's his girlfriend, or I guess you guys could even make up your own fanfiction as to what relation these two characters have alongside each other. But yeah, she basically is a female version of Tarn, and Tarn has such a sick design, so yeah, it definitely isn't a bad thing at all. And then finally, here we have her alongside a few core class figures, and much like when in ship mode, these are definitely the scale class which I think work the best with the Nemesis in robot mode. And it is kind of cool to compare the largest scale class that Hasbro release at mass retail to the smallest class. You know, there is a huge difference between these, and yeah, also a massive difference in terms of price point. And wrapping up on this review for the Legacy Evolution Titan class Nemesis. Overall, it's an incredibly solid looking figure. I mean, in terms of her ship mode, flawless. I really can't find any area of improvement. Looks near enough dead on to how it appeared in the original G1 series, and despite this being a retail release, it's great that it is near enough perfect scale with the Arc, in the sense that it is much larger, much like we saw from the original 80s animation. Transformation a little more complex when in comparison to past Titans, especially the recently released Cybertronian Metroplex, effect due to her actually having a cohesive ship mode, but when you get into that robot mode, I think she looks just as awesome as she did in ship mode. You know, it's great to see the design team kind of bringing these original designs into the main line, especially for a character which is a Titan class, and her articulation is fantastic. You know, she's just super dynamic. You can really kind of get her into sinister kind of lurching poses, and at least in my opinion, the design embodies Decepticon perfectly. So if you are after adding a companion piece to your Titan class arc, then this definitely is a fantastic release, although I would recommend perhaps waiting for a sale. She is by far the most expensive Titan class figure that we've so far seen released, and 9 times out of 10, if past experience was anything to go by, I do imagine that she'll be discounted around about the holiday season. So if you can hold out, I definitely would recommend to do so. But, you know, if you want to pick her up early, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Is this a piece you guys plan on adding to the collection? What do you think of her as far as the ship mode goes? And what do you think of the original take of her robot mode? Let me know down below, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.